Chapter 1. Returning to Cedar Ridge. I had spent too many years running from Cedar Ridge, from the suffocating expectations of family, from the tangled web of manipulation and lies they had woven around me. I had always promised myself I wouldn't go back, not after everything that happened, not after they had turned my life into a game. But when the phone call came, urgent and unyielding, there was no choice. It was time to face the truth, to tear down the walls they had built and take back what was mine. The moment I stepped out of my car, the familiar driveway stretched out before me like a reminder of everything I had left behind. Cedar Ridge looked the same as it always had, picturesque and serene, but there was nothing peaceful about the emotions surging inside me. My family had buried me in guilt, had woven their lies around me for so long, but now the truth was finally unraveling. I had uncovered their secrets, their manipulation, and now I had to make them face the consequences. I walked up to the door, my heart pounding in my chest. Mara and Cassie had thought they could shield themselves from their lies, but today I was here to shatter that illusion. I wasn't just here to confront them, I was here to reclaim my future. But now, here I was again, pulled back by the kind of phone call that felt like a chain around my neck. "Clara, it's your mother. You need to come home. There's something we need to sort out." Mara's voice came through, clipped and tense, the kind of tone she always used when there was something she didn't want to say directly. "It's important." I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to go back to that suffocating house filled with memories I'd spent years trying to forget. But the urgency in her voice left no room for argument. I knew there was no way around it. I had to go. When I pulled into the long, winding driveway of my childhood home, it hit me like a wall. Cedar Ridge had always been picturesque, the kind of small town that felt like it belonged in a postcard. But now, the familiar green pastures and towering trees felt suffocating. I hadn't realized how much I'd grown used to the noise and chaos of city life until now. The quiet here felt wrong. I parked my car in front of the house, staring up at the place I'd spent so many years trying to escape. The windows glowed with warm light, but it was the kind of warmth that made me feel colder. I hadn't been back in nearly 3 years. After my father passed away, everything changed. There was no one left to hold the family together, and Mara and Cassie seemed to crumble without him. I'd always been the outsider in my own family, but I tried to keep the peace, tried to make everything work even when I knew it was falling apart. I stepped out of the car, and the sound of the gravel crunching beneath my boots seemed to echo too loudly. I braced myself, swallowed the knot in my throat, and walked up the front steps. The door opened before I had a chance to knock. There stood Mara, my mother, the woman I used to adore, but now she looked like a stranger. Her once vibrant face was drawn, eyes tired and hollow, the years of stress showing in every wrinkle. "Clara, it's good to see you," she said, her voice strained as if she was trying to sound genuine but couldn't quite manage it. I nodded, trying to keep my composure, but a part of me recoiled inside. I stepped into the house, and the familiar smell of old wood and floral perfume hit me. It smelled like nostalgia, but in a suffocating way. It was too quiet. The way things used to be didn't exist here anymore. Cassie, my older sister, appeared from the kitchen wiping her hands on a dish towel. Her smile was forced, but that wasn't what bothered me. What bothered me was how she looked at me, as if she were trying to convince herself that everything was fine. Her eyes darted away from mine too quickly, almost as if she was hiding something. "Clara, it's been too long," she said, pulling me into a hug that was just a little too tight, like she was holding on to something. I pulled back, taking in the sight of her. Cassie was always the perfect one, the one who had it all together. I used to envy her for that, but now I could see the cracks. She wasn't as perfect as she tried to appear. Neither of them were. The house felt too small, the walls too close. We sat down in the living room, and the conversation started like it always did, with pleasantries. How was the city? How was my work? All the small talk we never really cared about. but I could feel the weight of the unspoken truth hanging between us, thick in the air. Mara leaned forward, clasping her hands together on the coffee table. Her voice was low but urgent. "Clara, we need to talk about the family." I felt a knot in my stomach. The way she said it, the way her voice trembled, it felt like she was asking for forgiveness before even explaining what was wrong. But I wasn't ready to let her off the hook that easily. "I don't understand. What's going on?" I asked, trying to keep my tone neutral. I wasn't going to let them manipulate me this time. Cassie exchanged a quick look at Mara, a brief moment of tension passing between them. Then Mara spoke again, her words slower, more deliberate. "We've been handling something about the estate. It's complicated. We've been making decisions and we need you to sign off on a few things. Your father would have wanted this." I felt my pulse quicken. My father's estate. That was the first time they had mentioned it. We never talked about the finances. My father handled all that before he passed. Why was it suddenly up to me now? "What decisions?" I asked, my voice sharp. Mara hesitated, and that hesitation spoke volumes. I could see Cassie shifting uncomfortably in her seat, avoiding my gaze. "We've moved some things around," Mara said carefully, "reorganized some assets. For the good of the family." "For the good of the family?" I repeated, almost laughing. The irony stung. Mara's eyes flickered with something, but I couldn't place it. "Yes, Clara, there are things we need to do to protect the family, to make sure things stay stable." The words felt rehearsed, like they had been said over and over to convince themselves, but I wasn't convinced. I felt a chill run through me. I stood up, suddenly feeling restless. The room was closing in on me. "You're hiding something," I said, the words slipping out before I could stop myself. Cassie stood up too, her face tightening. "Clara, you don't understand. We're just trying to keep everything in order. You've been gone too long. You don't know what's been going on." "Then tell me," I shot back, the anger I had been holding back now rising to the surface. There was a long pause. No one spoke. The silence felt suffocating. "I need to see the documents," I said finally, my voice steady but determined. Mara and Cassie exchanged a quick glance, but they didn't object. Mara just nodded, the faintest look of guilt flashing across her face. But it was too late. For apologies, too late for the lies. As I sat down at the table with the financial documents they handed me, I could feel my heart racing. I went through page after page, my eyes scanning for anything that didn't make sense. It all looked too clean, too neat, and something about it felt wrong. And then I saw it, the one line that stopped me cold. A large family asset, our family home, had been transferred to a third party without my consent. No mention of it in the will, no prior discussions. My hands shook as I read the document again, then again. It didn't make sense. This wasn't just a mistake. This was deliberate. I stood up abruptly, the chair scraping across the floor as I walked to the window. The night outside felt colder than before, as if the entire world had shifted and left me standing in the middle of it, alone. I had always suspected something was wrong, but now I knew for sure. They had been hiding something, and it was up to me to uncover it. I turned back to face them, the document still in my hands. "I'll find out what's really going on," I said quietly, the weight of the truth settling over me. There was no turning back now. The tension in the room was palpable as I walked out of the house, the documents burning a hold in my hands. I didn't know where this would lead, but one thing was certain. I wasn't leaving here until I found out the full truth. Chapter 2. Secrets Exposed. I sat at the dining table, the stack of papers in front of me feeling heavier than it should. My hands trembled as I sifted through the documents. The more I read, the more my heart sank. It wasn't just the transfers I'd found. It was the sense of being manipulated, of being excluded from my own family's future. How could they do this? Why wouldn't they just tell me what was happening? I'd always trusted my family, despite everything. I had never questioned their intentions, not even when they made me feel like an outsider. But now, the more I read, the more everything seemed so calculated, so cold. The asset transfers weren't a mistake. These were deliberate actions taken behind my back, decisions made without a single word to me. As I turned another page, I saw it clearly. A large portion of the family's wealth had been funneled into a shell company overseas. But the real shocker came when I found the name attached to those transactions. Cassie, my sister. She'd been involved in this from the start. I felt my stomach drop. How could she do this to me? To our family? I leaned back in my chair, staring at the documents in disbelief. Mara and Cassie had been lying to me for months, maybe even longer. And what was worse, it seemed like they weren't just playing with money, they were playing with lives. I couldn't wrap my head around it. This wasn't just financial mismanagement. This was something bigger, something that went way beyond our family's finances. I grabbed my phone, my hands still shaking. I needed help. I couldn't do this alone. I dialed Tom Hansen's number, the lawyer I had worked with a few years ago when I was setting up the startup. He picked up on the second ring. Clara, what's going on? I thought you'd gotten out of this whole mess with your family. I need you to help me with something. I'm looking into some financial documents, and I think my family has been hiding something. I need to know how to handle this. Tom's voice was immediately concerned. What kind of documents? What are they hiding? They've been transferring assets without telling me. Some of them are even going to a shell company overseas. And I think they're involved in something a lot worse than just messing around with money. There was a pause on the other end of the line, and then he let out a slow breath. Clara, that's serious. If this is what I think it is, you need to be really careful. I know, I don't know what to do. This isn't just about the estate. This is about something much bigger. Tom sighed. I don't have to tell you that this kind of thing can get messy fast. You don't want to go down this road unless you're ready to handle the fallout. And believe me, there will be fallout. You should consider your next steps very carefully. Your family won't just roll over when they see you digging into this. I ran a hand through my hair, trying to gather my thoughts. I know, but I don't have a choice. I'm already in this. I need to know the truth. Okay, Tom said after a long pause. I'll help you, but you need to make sure you're covering your tracks. If your sister's involved, this might go deeper than just a family issue. Do you have everything you need? Or do you need me to start looking into it from my end? I've got what I need for now. I'll keep you posted, but I'll need your help when it comes time to take action. All right, just don't rush it. Get your facts in order before you do anything drastic, he warned. And Clara, be careful. There are people who will stop at nothing to protect what they have. Thanks, Tom. I will. But my voice felt hollow. I knew he was right. The deeper I dug, the more dangerous this would get. But I wasn't backing down. Not again. After hanging up, I sat there in silence for a few minutes, staring at the stack of papers in front of me. I had to get to the bottom of this. It wasn't just about money. It was about trust. And I wasn't going to let them steal that from me. Not again. I spent the next few hours combing through every page, cross-referencing names, dates, and signatures. The more I dug, the more disturbing it became. The company they were funneling money to, Meridian International, wasn't just a shell company. It was linked to several offshore accounts tied to questionable individuals in foreign countries. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. My own family, involved in money laundering. It was worse than I thought. I thought I might be missing something. There had to be some kind of mistake, right? Maybe I was misinterpreting the data. But as I scrolled through more documents, the pattern became clearer. The money wasn't just moving around, it was being hidden. And the transfers kept increasing from the family trust fund to these overseas accounts at a pace that suggested This had been going on for a while. I knew I couldn't handle this on my own. This wasn't just a family issue anymore. I was tangled up in something much bigger, and I needed help. Real help. That's when I thought about Kevin Harris. He wasn't just a police officer. He was someone I trusted, someone who understood the system. He'd been a part of my life back when I lived here, and even though we hadn't stayed in touch, I knew he'd be the one to help me make sense of this. I grabbed my phone and dialed his number, hoping he'd answer. It rang 3 times before he picked up. Clara? What's going on? Haven't heard from you in a while. I need your help, Kevin. I'm looking into something, and it's way bigger than I thought. Bigger than you thought? He paused. What do you mean? I think my family has been involved in money laundering. I found documents, transfers, offshore accounts. I need someone who knows how to handle this kind of thing. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Then he sighed and said, Clara, that's not something to mess around with. If what you're saying is true, it could get really dangerous. You sure you want to go down this road? I don't have a choice. I have to know the truth. I don't care how deep it goes. I need to understand what's really happening. He didn't respond right away. I could hear the hesitation in his voice, but finally he agreed. All right, I'll help you, but you need to make sure you're covering your tracks. If your sister's involved, this might go deeper than just a family issue. Do you have everything you need, or do you need me to start looking into it from my end? I've got what I need for now. I'll keep you posted, but I'll need your help when it comes time to take action. All right, just don't rush it. Get your facts in order before you do anything drastic. And Clara, be careful. There are people who will stop at nothing to protect what they have. Thanks, Tom. I will. But my voice felt hollow. I knew he was right. The deeper I dug, the more dangerous this would get. But I wasn't backing down. Not again. Chapter 3. Confronting the Family. This was only the beginning. The deeper I dug, the darker it all seemed to get. The more I uncovered, the more unsettled I became. I couldn't stop now. I had to face them. It was time to confront my family. I couldn't let them manipulate me any longer, not when I knew the truth. The secrets they had kept, the lies they'd fed me, they couldn't stay hidden any longer. That evening, I sat in my car outside the house for longer than I had intended. The feeling of dread settled over me like a heavy blanket. It had been years since we had all sat down together for dinner, and the thought of being under the same roof again, with everything that had happened, made my chest tighten. But I couldn't avoid this. I couldn't let them think they could hide from the truth any longer. I took a deep breath, steeled myself, and stepped out of the car, walking up to the door with purpose. The house loomed over me, silent and still, almost as if it were holding its breath, waiting for what was to come. I rang the doorbell, and when the door opened, there was Mara, my mother, looking almost relieved to see me. She quickly ushered me in, a false smile plastered on her face. Clara, it's good to see you, Myra said, but there was no warmth in her voice, just the same forced politeness I had grown so familiar with. I nodded stiffly, following her inside. Cassie was already sitting at the table, stirring something in her glass as though she were deep in thought. When she saw me, her face lit up, but again, there was no real joy, just the kind of smile people give when they're pretending everything is fine. Hey, Clara, Cassie greeted me, her voice too light, too casual. She was avoiding my eyes. I sat down across from her, my eyes scanning the room, the familiar furnishings, the pictures on the walls, and the sense of nostalgia that clung to everything. It was the same house, but it felt different. It felt empty, like a shell of what it once was. Let's eat, Mara said after a moment, trying to break the silence. She gestured toward the meal set on the table, but I couldn't focus on the food. My mind was racing. The time for pleasantries was over. I couldn't hold back anymore. "We need to talk," I said, my voice sharp and steady, betraying none of the anxiety I felt inside. Mara and Cassie exchanged quick, almost imperceptible glances. "About what?" Mara asked, her tone light, but her eyes darkened slightly. "You know exactly what," I said. I didn't have time to beat around the bush anymore. I pulled the stack of documents from my bag and placed them on the table between us. The room seemed to shrink as I looked from Mara to Cassie. "You've been hiding things from me, transferring assets, using family money without telling me. How long did you think you could get away with this?" I could see their expressions change in an instant. Mara's lips tightened into a thin line, and Cassie's eyes flashed with something. Defensiveness, maybe. Guilt. But it was the kind of guilt that doesn't feel like an apology. It felt like fear. "Clara, it's not what you think," Mara said, her voice suddenly softer. She reached for one of the documents and glanced over it, as if trying to buy time. I shook my head. Don't try to tell me this is all just a misunderstanding. I've seen the documents. I've seen the transfers. Don't lie to me." "Clara, please calm down," Cassie said, her tone more nervous now, her hand fidgeting with her glass. "It wasn't like that. We did what we had to do for the family. We had to protect the assets, protect everything." "Protect the family?" I repeated, feeling the anger rise in my chest. "You've been taking what's mine, without asking, without even telling me. How is that protecting the family? How is that honoring anything?" Mara sighed, and I could see her composure faltering for the first time. "Clara, you don't understand. This was necessary. It was for the good of the family. You've been away. You've been busy with your own life. We did what needed to be done. Your father would have understood." "Don't use Dad to justify this," I snapped. "This isn't about Dad anymore. This is about you two thinking you could just make decisions behind my back, using his name to cover up your greed. You can't hide this. Not anymore. I've seen the money laundering, the shell companies. I know what's going on." Their faces went pale, and for a moment, neither of them said anything. Cassie opened her mouth, but no words came out. I could feel the walls closing in around me as I waited for one of them to say something that made sense. But instead, Mara just sat back in her chair, a defeated look crossing her face. "Clara, we did what we thought was best," Mara finally said, her voice almost pleading. "You don't know what it's been like. It's been hard since your father passed away. We had to take control. The company, the estate, it was all too much. We didn't want to burden you with it." "No," I said, standing up. "You didn't want to burden me. You wanted to take everything for yourselves and leave me out of it. I'm not stupid. You thought I wouldn't find out, but I did." Mara's eyes narrowed, but I wasn't backing down now. "You knew this day would come. You knew I wouldn't just stay quiet when I found out the truth. And I'm not going to just sit here and let you lie to me anymore." Before either of them could respond, there was a knock at the door. All three of us turned, startled. I hadn't expected anyone else to be here, but when the door opened, it wasn't a friend or a neighbor. It was Elias Whitmore, my estranged grandfather, stepping into the room. For a moment, I couldn't move. I hadn't seen Elias in years. The last time we spoke, he had walked out of our lives unable to deal with the dysfunction of the family. But here he was now, standing in the doorway, a tall figure that seemed to fill the room with an authority I hadn't realized he still had. "Mara, Cassie," Elias said, his voice calm but firm. It's time for the truth to come out. The room went silent. Mara and Cassie both looked like they had seen a ghost, and for a long moment, no one spoke. "I've been watching everything, Clara," Elias said, his gaze turning to me. "You deserve to know everything, not just what they want to tell you. This family has a long history of betrayal. It's time you knew the truth about what really happened." My heart raced as I took in his words. Elias was back. And now everything was about to change. I stood frozen, my mind racing as the realization hit me. This wasn't just a family dispute anymore. This was a battle for control, for truth. And Elias had just handed me the key to everything. The next steps were crucial. I had to make sure I wasn't the one left in the dark any longer. But for now, all I could do was listen. I could feel the weight of the moment settle around me, the past crashing into the present. And for the first time in years, I knew that things were going to change for good. Chapter 4. The Legal Battle. I could feel the weight of the moment settle around me, the past crashing into the present, and for the first time in years, I knew that things were going to change for good. But change didn't come without sacrifice. I wasn't sure what the next steps would be, but I knew one thing. I couldn't back down. Not now. Not when everything I cared about, the truth, justice, my future, was on the line. After Elias's shocking return, I spent the next few days poring over the documents he had given me. The family's financial dealings were far more complex than I had originally imagined, and every turn led me deeper into a labyrinth of lies, deception, and outright criminal activity. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, that there were eyes on me at every corner, especially as I started to uncover more of the dark side of my family's wealth. I knew I needed help, and I needed it fast. The first person I reached out to was Tom Hansen, my former lawyer. I had worked with him years ago on a few contracts when I first started my business, and I trusted him. Tom was no stranger to corporate fraud, but this was different. This wasn't just a matter of bad investments or poor management. This was something criminal, something dangerous. "Tom, I need you," I said when he answered his phone. "It's my family. I think they're involved in money laundering. I've got the evidence, but I need someone who knows what they're doing to help me with this. I'm in over my head." There was a long pause before he replied. "Money laundering? Are you sure? This sounds—" "I'm sure," I interrupted. "I found the paper trail, Tom. I need you to help me connect the dots and make sure I'm not missing anything important. I don't care what it takes. I need to take them down." Another pause. Okay, Tom finally said. "I'll help. I'll start looking into it on my end. You keep doing what you're doing, and we'll figure out a plan." I felt a bit of relief at his words, but deep down, I knew this was just the beginning. Tom was one part of the puzzle, but I also needed someone who knew how to dig into the criminal side of things. I needed Kevin Harris, a former cop who had turned into a private investigator after his time with the police force. He'd helped me in the past, and he was the only person I trusted enough to bring into the mix. I called him the next morning, my hands shaking as I dialed the number. "Kevin Harris?" he answered, his voice familiar but with the tired edge. "Kevin, it's Clara. I need your help. It's about my family. I think they've been involved in money laundering, and I've uncovered some disturbing stuff. I need you to help me dig deeper." "Clara? Money laundering?" he replied, his tone turning serious. "This isn't something you want to mess with. You sure about this?" "I'm sure," I said, feeling the weight of the situation settle into my chest. "I've seen the transactions, Kevin. This isn't just about family disputes anymore. This is criminal, and I need to know exactly what I'm dealing with." All right, he said, after a moment of silence. "I'll take a look, but I'm telling you, this could get messy. Let me do my part. Keep your head low for now." "I will," I said, knowing he was right. The deeper I went, the more dangerous this would become. The following weeks were a blur of documents, phone calls, and meetings with Tom and Kevin. Every day brought new information, each piece of evidence pointing to something far worse than I had imagined. My family had not just been hiding money, they were connected to a global network of criminal enterprises operating in and out of the country. The more we uncovered, the more the walls seemed to close in. The money that had been laundered wasn't just coming from shady investments, it was being funneled into illegal activities, including drug trade and arms deals. My family wasn't just involved in petty fraud, they were linked to an international criminal syndicate. Tom, Kevin, and I met at a small cafe one afternoon, our usual meeting spot. I could feel the tension in the air as I sat down, the weight of what we were uncovering hanging over all of us. "You aren't wrong," Kevin said, leaning forward, his voice low. "This is big, bigger than I thought." "I know," I replied, my voice tight with frustration. "How could they let this happen? They've been doing this for years." Tom placed a folder in front of me, and I opened it to find more documents, offshore accounts, hidden transactions, and names I recognized from the shady side of town, people I had seen in the news tied to international criminal networks. "This is what I found," Tom said quietly. "Your family has been using this network to cover up their tracks, and this isn't just about money anymore, it's about power." I felt sick to my stomach. I never thought it would go this far. How do I stop them? "We have to go public," Kevin said. "We expose everything. This goes beyond family drama. It's criminal activity, and it has to be stopped." I nodded, but deep down, I was torn. I wanted to tear them down. I wanted to expose everything, but I knew that doing so would come with a price. "Are you ready for the fallout?" Tom asked, his voice steady but cautious. I hesitated. Am I ready? The truth is, I wasn't sure, but I knew I couldn't back down. If I didn't fight, who would? "I have to do this," I said finally, my voice firm. "For the family, for the truth, I have to see this through." As I prepared for the legal battle ahead, I knew things were going to get even messier. My family wasn't just going to roll over and accept defeat. They would fight back, using every tactic they could. And the more I uncovered, the more I realized how far-reaching their influence was. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about exposing a system of corruption that ran deeper than I could have ever imagined. But for the first time in years, I felt a sense of clarity. I wasn't fighting for money or for personal gain. I was fighting for justice, and that was worth everything. I spent the next few days preparing for the inevitable confrontation with my family. They wouldn't just let me take them down without a fight, and I could feel the pressure building, but I wasn't going to back down. I had uncovered too much. Now it was time to make them face the consequences. But I knew it wasn't going to be easy, and the more I thought about it, the more I realized just how high the stakes had become. I wasn't just taking on my family anymore, I was taking on a criminal empire. And there was no turning back now. Chapter 5: Karma and Justice. And there was no turning back now. I had crossed the line, and the only way forward was to see this through to the end. It wasn't just the legal battle that had me on edge. It was the realization that I had completely broken free from the family I once tried so desperately to save. They were no longer my responsibility. I wasn't their daughter, their pawn, anymore. The days following the trial were a whirlwind. After the final verdict, the consequences for my family came swiftly. Mara and Cassie's lives unraveled in a way I couldn't have imagined. The legal charges were severe. money laundering, fraud, and conspiracy to conceal assets. The assets that they had so carefully hoarded for years were seized, their personal accounts frozen. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel the slightest bit of guilt. As I sat in my office the day after the verdict, the phone rang. It was Elias. I hadn't heard from him since the trial ended. I picked up, unsure of what to expect. "Clara, I wanted to check in." Elias's voice was gravelly, but there was something comforting in his words. "I know this has been tough, but I wanted to tell you something important." "What's that?" I asked, leaning back in my chair, my fingers tapping lightly on the desk. "You've done something incredible," Elias continued, his voice softening. "But it's not just about the money, the assets, or even the legal victory. You've taken back your life. That's what matters." I sat quietly for a moment, absorbing his words. I had been so focused on the fight, on reclaiming what was taken from me, that I hadn't stopped to consider the real victory here. It wasn't about punishing my family. It was about regaining my freedom. And Elias was right. It mattered more than anything. "You've done more than just fight for what's yours, Clara. You've set yourself free. And don't let anyone ever make you feel like you owe them anything again." I could feel the weight of his words settling in. The battle had been long, painful, and full of doubt. But now, in this moment, I knew that everything I had done, every step I had taken, had led to this. I wasn't just fighting to regain my family's wealth or my father's legacy. I was fighting for my self-worth. The next few weeks were a blur of legal paperwork, asset distribution, and media coverage. It wasn't the victory I expected. The whole process felt sterile, impersonal. The real change was in me, not in the money I got back, not in the loss of my family's legacy. It was in the way I felt about myself. I had been reborn from the ashes of the destruction they left in their wake. But there was something missing. Despite everything I had achieved, despite winning this battle, I felt the quiet, aching emptiness of loss. My family, the people I thought I could rely on, were gone. Not just physically, but emotionally. And the weight of that loss was heavier than anything I had ever imagined. One evening, I found myself sitting by the window, staring out at the city skyline. It was quiet, peaceful in a way I hadn't allowed myself to feel in years. The apartment felt like a sanctuary now, a place I could finally breathe without the constant pressure of their expectations hanging over me. My phone buzzed, breaking the silence. It was a text from Kevin. "How are you holding up? You did it. You got your life back." I smiled softly, reading his message. Kevin had been a constant through all of this. He was the one person who never judged me, who never tried to manipulate me. He had always been the steady hand I needed, even if he had his own struggles. "I'm doing okay," I replied. "Better than okay, actually. I finally feel like I'm in control of my own life." The response came almost immediately. "Good, you've earned it. Just don't forget that you're not alone in this." I sat back, letting the words settle in. I hadn't realized how much I had needed that reassurance. The days turned into weeks, and I began to realize something important. I didn't need my family's approval anymore. I didn't need their validation to be enough. The journey I had been on wasn't just about taking down my family's empire or reclaiming the wealth they had stolen from me. It was about empowering myself. And in a way, it was about forgiving myself for letting them control me for so long. As the final pieces of my past came into focus, I made the decision to move forward, not just as a woman who had won her inheritance back, but as someone who had reclaimed her own sense of identity. I was done being the person they wanted me to be. I was done being the victim of their manipulation. I was my own person now, free to live the life I had always wanted. One evening, as I sat in my apartment, organizing the final bits of paperwork from the estate, I received another call. This time, it was from my lawyer, Tom. Clara, it's official. The case is closed. Everything has been settled. You've won. I felt the familiar tension release from my shoulders as the finality of his words sunk in. I hadn't realized just how tightly I had been holding my breath until that moment. Thank you, Tom, I said, my voice thick with emotion. I couldn't have done it without you. Of course. But remember, Clara, this victory wasn't just about getting back what was stolen from you. It was about finding yourself again. I smiled, sitting back in my chair, finally feeling like everything was falling into place. I didn't need my family's approval, their fortune, or their love to be happy.